Brandon Aiyuk finished last year 24th in receptions, 7th in yards, 17th in touchdowns amongst wide receivers, and is now the 4th highest paid receiver in the National Football League. Tony Wiggins is going to make it all make sense for you right now on this episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to this Friday episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering the National Football League, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. I'm David Harrison. He is Tony Wiggins, both of us credentialed members of the media. I'm covering the Washington Commanders. Tony is covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for this illustrious network, which means you can find us on Locked On Commanders and Locked On Jags, respectively. Locked On NFL is here for you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers and everydayers. We appreciate your continued support for this network and for this program. On today's episode, we're going to look over the Week 1 NFL matchups, and we're going to pick some must-win matchups. First week of the season, but there are already going to be some teams that absolutely need to come out of that first weekend with a win. We're going to ask the question, what about Trent Williams, the veteran left tackle? Where's the love for him? Because Brandon Aiyuk is feeling all the love. Tony Wiggins, right before we get ready to get set to record this Friday episode, news breaks that Brandon Aiyuk and the San Francisco 49ers stalemate is over. The hold-in is over. It is a 4-year, $120 million deal, $30 million annual per year on average, $76 million guaranteed. He is now tied for the 4th highest annual average value in contracts in the National Football League among wide receivers, tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. We're going to break this down further, but before we get into it, let's hear from Locked On 49ers.
Wow, the saga's over. Brandon Aiyuk back with the San Francisco 49ers. All right, now what's the line for the Monday Night Football game against the New York Jets, Croc?
I think it's a true 3.5 in favor of the Niners. A true 3.5. I feel much better. My vibes, I'm not going to lie. We've been talking about this and stuff, and I've been a little, but I will say this. Let's see how people's tune changes towards Brandon Aiyuk. See, my tune towards him never changed. It's, hey, I want him with the 49ers. There have been a lot of people that have been on the other side. Oh, just let him go. He's a diva. He's this, he's that. And now, what are those same people doing? They got the same smile on their face that I have.
That was Ryan Peacock and Eric Crocker from Locked On 49ers. Eric Crocker, for the most part, reacting to the news. Wig, I want to get your initial thoughts just on the news. Brandon Aiyuk saga is finally over.
It's his turn. Folks want to ask, is he worth it, or where does he rank on this list, or where does he rank on that list? It's just his turn. He's been productive enough, but more than that, production aren't stats. All right. Stats are just a part of production. Production is also what you see. It's also the context of what team someone plays for. Now, if Brandon Aiyuk was in the top 5, like a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, well, either George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, or Deebo Samuel wouldn't be to the status where they are. Mm-hmm. You have to put it in context. Does he play for a winner? Is he playing on a team that wins a lot? And how do they spread the ball around? I know everybody's going to say, well, Travis Kelce had big numbers. Tyreek Hill had big numbers. They both were on the same team, different ball club. The 49ers run the ball more than they do anything else. So sometimes you got to put things in the context to really understand that, you're chasing your own tail when you're just looking at one aspect of how productive a player is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the cold open was. Or the cold open was what we call stat scouting, right? And stat scouting is something that a lot of people are going to do, and it can be very, very dangerous because, again, for those who missed the cold open or weren't paying full attention, 24th in receptions in the NFL among wide receivers last year. That's where Brandon Aiyuk ranked. And look, Brandon played 16 of 17 possible regular season games. So those numbers are going to be a little bit skewed because he missed a full game or didn't play a full game. But even if you add in a full game, you're still probably maybe cracking top 20, top 18, right? Still not top 4 yards. Same thing, top 7, which is obviously much better, but isn't top 4, top 5 type of production. And then 18th in touchdowns, or tied for 17th, I should say, with 7 touchdowns. But then there are some other stats, and this is where we get a little bit more into the analytics that kind of speak to what you're talking about, Tony. Yards per reception. Brandon Aiyuk, second in the National Football League last year in yards per reception, 17.9 yards per reception. Catch percentage, 71.4%, ninth in the National Football League, so top 10 there. And then successful percentage of his plays. So of the catches that Brandon Aiyuk brings in, 70.5% of those catches are successful plays, meaning they either earn it's 10% of or 20% of the first down yardage, 60%. Man, I need to know this for the regular season, so I better get my act together. 60% of second down yardage or 100% of third down yardage. That's what a successful play is considered in the National Football League. So 70.5% of the time, the 49ers put the ball in Brandon Aiyuk's hands. They are coming up with a successful play, no matter what down it is. That was the number one success percentage rate in the National Football League among wide receivers. So like you're saying here, when you give the ball to Brandon Aiyuk and you're the San Francisco 49ers, good things happen. No, you're not going to give it to him every single time because there's a lot of dudes on this team that need the ball. But just like you just said, getting those guys the ball makes things work for the San Francisco 49ers team. And that is why keeping the band together, the band is the best part here. It's not just about Ringo. It's not just about Lennon. It's about the entire Beatles group. And that's what the San Francisco 49ers just did, keeping the group together. It's trickle down economics, guys. It's not straight up stat scouting. You got to look a little bit deeper into the numbers. But then let's turn to the tape. Right, we watched Brandon Aiyuk play. I watched Brandon Aiyuk tear the Washington Commanders apart in FedEx Field, what used to be called FedEx Field, now being called Northwest Stadium there in Landover, Maryland. And Brandon Aiyuk simply does everything that you need a number one wide receiver to do. He wins off the line of scrimmage with his release. He knows how to manipulate his stem to get defenders in positions that they don't want to be in. He has an amazing ability to get in and out of his break, and he makes the play. Again, just go back to the catch percentage. Makes the play at the catch point. Brandon Aiyuk, he's not as electric as Jamar Chase is on a week in, week out basis. Maybe not as electric as Justin Jefferson is week in, week out. Maybe not as physically imposing as A.J. Brown is. But when you look at the pedigree of top receivers in the National Football League, he is certainly among the top.
You're exactly right. All of that analytics stuff, all of that stuff you said, I'm not anti-analytics. I'm just anti-analytics for Wig because I know how I think, right? And I think too much already. My deal is what you basically described is you got eyeballs. I'm an old school dude. I got eyeballs. I saw what he did. I saw how he did it. I saw how effective he was. And I didn't know the numbers. But the thing is, sometimes we do have to trust our eyes, especially when you've been watching the game for such a long time. You know what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. And he looks like a guy that when it was his turn, he was going to reset the market. Now, Jamar Chase is going to blow the ceiling off of the market, and he should because he has that talent that is way high. But it was just his turn, man. He's very efficient. When you start arguing with yourself whether or not a guy's worth the money, just then do this. What doesn't he do well? And see, you'll get stuck on the first sentence. So that means he does it well. And then they know his workflow. They know his competitiveness. I mean, when that ball bounced off that dude's head, he didn't quit on the play. He caught it. So my thing is he was in position. They know what they have. They understand that. And that's the stuff that they see every day that we don't have a chance to see it unless you're in the media in San Francisco.
Yeah, man. And exactly like the eye test, the stats are great. The analytics are better. But at the end of the day, the eye test is the ultimate evaluation tool. Look, you don't need a stopwatch in your hand to know that Tyreek Hill runs really freaking fast, and you don't need to break down all the analytics per catch this, per yard that, and all that stuff to know that Brandon Aiyuk is one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. The rest of that stuff, total catches, touchdowns, that's for your fantasy team, and guys don't get paid based on your fantasy team. A little bit of an interesting note, a little bit of drama here. Adam Schefter reporting, as all the reporting. So Ian Rappaport, Mike Garafolo, the first that I'm aware of to report the deal between the Niners and Brandon Aiyuk, but Adam Schefter of ESPN kind of following up on that, saying that the hold-in didn't change any parts of Brandon Aiyuk's deal. 4 years, $120 million is what was on the table on August 10th. Schefter saying that that's the same deal that he just accepted. Brandon Aiyuk's agent, Ryan Williams, retweeting Adam Schefter and saying that is factually inaccurate. And I didn't say it was wrong. He said inaccurate, which tells me, Wig, 4 years, $120 million, yes, on the table August 10th, but not in the same way that Brandon Aiyuk is getting it on August 29th.
The language matters. Clauses matter. So when he says it's factual, see, the thing about Schefter, he could be right. This is what I keep saying about numbers. Schefter could be right. It's the same 4 year, $120 million. But what Schefter could be wrong at is the way he framed it. What if they acquiesce to Aiyuk's side? What if what happened is what Aiyuk asked for back then that they refused to give him, they finally buckled and said, okay, with like a no trade clause. That's very, very important. Don't try to send me somewhere I don't want to go. There's a lot of different things, the way the contract is structured. All of these maybe have some discipline stuff in there. You never know. But when a guy holds out and then you see the number being the same, you always just assume, well, now he ain't going to lose any paychecks, so he needs to come back. No, maybe they don't want to lose games, and they brought him back by giving him what he asked for in all of those clauses.
Trent Williams, left tackle, is wondering when his check is going to clear the bank. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
5 Hour Energy is the brand that's hardworking people like and have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling that they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com.
Brandon Aiyuk has been paid by the San Francisco 49ers to the tune of a top 4 annual average value contract in the National Football League. But there's another 49er who wants to see a little bit of that gold come his way. All-pro left tackle Trent Williams now still wanting his contract, still wondering when his payday is coming. Thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen today and every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast, where you can get your daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Tony, Trent Williams is a little bit of a different situation, a little bit more, I think, a little bit more interesting and curious as to the timing, because while a lot of people, like Eric Crocker just said, right? Maybe some people are like, oh, Brandon Aiyuk's a diva, doesn't deserve all that money. Just let him go. Just trade him, get what you can, all that other stuff. People still at least understood why he was going after the money he was going after. But Trent Williams, there are some people who are a little bit confused because Trent Williams' current contract runs through 2026. So he's got years. He's got this year, next year, and the year after that still on this current deal, yet he is holding out for a new contract. So let's kind of start there. What are your thoughts just overall about Trent Williams holding out from the 49ers, trying to get a new contract with 3 seasons, essentially, including this one, left on his current contract?
Trying to get some more money before he retires. That's all it's going to be, because if he runs these 3 years out, guess what? He's going to be on the old side of trying to ask some people for some money, because people don't pay you for what you did. They pay you for what you can do for them now.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to cash out. Here's what might happen. Maybe they just take some of that money that's due in 26 and they transfer it and make it a bonus right now. Give him some more upfront cash right now. Here, Trent, here's another $8 million off of all that future money. I think it might make him happy. He ain't got too much leverage anymore. All of his leverage is right now. And guess what? He's trying to exercise as much as he can. But the thing is he ain't going to have it in 2 or 3 years because it's going to be too old.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to try to do it now. You got to try to get everything you can do. I ain't blaming him.
That's exactly what it is, because he's 36 years old right now. So when you look at it, by the time his 2026 deal comes up, so 2026 would be his contract year. By the time that year comes and goes, he's looking at being 38 years old. The San Francisco 49ers still really can't afford to get rid of him then. And he carries an $8 million dead cap hit, when he enters that season. So even if he's fallen off a little bit, he's not going to want to do that. But when you look at it right now, we talk about, where contracts rank, and Brandon Aiyuk now being tied for 4th, right? Well, Trent Williams is also 4th among left tackles in the National Football League in annual average value. So Christian Darrisaw, 25-year-old left tackle, just got his new deal with the Vikings. He's number 1 in the NFL, $26 million a year. Laramie Tunsil with the Houston Texans, he's 2nd with 25. Andrew Thomas with the New York Giants is 3rd with 23.5. Trent Williams is sitting at $23 million. But if I were to ask you in 2024, which of those 4 tackles is the best tackle in that group, you're going to say Trent Williams, right? The rankings show it. The NFL polls show it. The executive anonymous surveys show it. And Trent Williams knows he is the number one tackle in this game right now. So he wants that $23.010 million annual average value contract to go up to 26.5 or more. He wants to be paid as the top guy. And look, for you and me, we're like, bro, you're already making 23 mil a year. You're really going to do this over 3 mil a year. But I think the question for the 49ers, or that he's asking the 49ers, is it's not about whether or not I'm willing to hold out for $3 more million a year over the next 3 or 4 years. The question is, are you really going to be able to afford to not give me that extra $3 million a year for the next 3 or 4 years while you're in your Super Bowl window? So, Wig, I ask you this. Brandon Aiyuk is coming back. But which player is more important to the San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl championship chances this season? Trent Williams, your left tackle, or Brandon Aiyuk, your number one receiver?
Trent Williams is. Trent Williams is the most. I think he's, outside of Christian McCaffrey, he's the most important player on the team. That's just because Brock Purdy isn't necessarily the kind of quarterback that is going to create things on his own too much, especially if he's getting too much pressure. You hardly ever get pressure. I don't care who lines up across from Trent Williams. He is so good, you don't worry about it. And it's just the optics doesn't look good when you got a first ballot Hall of Famer who's so important to your hopes and your wishes asking for money like this. The thing is you can find a way to do it. The cap will lower down, I think, a little bit. There's a certain way you can get this done. And 8 to 10 million. Here you go. We're going to take some of that future money. We'll give it to you right now in the form of a bonus, right? That's what you do. Take care of it.
So it's interesting because the 49ers, according to Over the Cap, currently coming into the Brandon Aiyuk deal, I should say. Before the Brandon Aiyuk deal, the San Francisco 49ers have $39.16 million in cap space left for the 2024 season, which is not a bad amount of money. Brandon Aiyuk accounted for $14.124 million of that already on the current money he was supposed to earn this season anyway. Now, a lot of times when you see these new deals, and full disclosure, we do not know the contract details and how the breakdown. So we don't know how much is this year, how much is next year, all that stuff for the Aiyuk deal. But a lot of times in these deals, the current year salary cap hit stays the same. The way they work these contracts, a lot of that future money is actually accounted for as well on the books later. Now, again, we'll have to see if that, takes effect this year and all that stuff. But even if, let's say this year's salary cap number, Wig, jumped up to that $30 million number. Let's say it increased by 16 million, 39 minus $16 million equals still enough money to give Trent Williams $3 to $4 million more per year. So do you think the Niners need to buckle, or do you think Trent Williams needs to buckle? Like, who needs to blink first here in your eyes?
49ers need to blink. I just wouldn't play around with it. He's too valuable. And like I said, you don't want it to drag out. You don't want to keep talking about it. You don't want to be the thing that other players have to answer for and all of those things. You know what? I'm going to just admit something. Everybody knows that may know I grew up a Washington fan as a kid. Mm-hmm. And when I started to fall off, even though I was living in Jacksonville, my hometown, and I was covering the Jaguars, I started to fall off when I started hearing about some things in the back office or the front office. But mainly what I heard was this, that dude had something going on in his head, Trent Williams, and they had bad medical advice. And then he sought outside advice, and they realized they were wrong, and then actually got angry when he asked to get traded. Trent Williams done been through it, man. Trent Williams need to get everything he deserves.
Yeah. Look, Trent Williams has seen the worst parts of the NFL trying to milk the player for everything they can get. So I have zero qualms about him trying to milk the NFL for everything that he can get. And honestly, I think he deserves it. And you know what? Smart on him, because the San Francisco 49ers are not winning a Super Bowl without Trent Williams, period. Just point blank is not going to happen. I promise you that. So, yeah, the 49ers absolutely have to blink first. I think Trent Williams is doing what he's got to do. And look, there's still time. The San Francisco 49ers don't play until Monday, September 9th. So we're a good amount away. We're still 11, 12 days or so away from the Niners having to actually face the New York Jets without Trent Williams. And honestly, Wig, if the 49ers play the New York Jets and that defensive front, especially without Trent Williams, they open at home. They may also open up with a loss at home.
They very well could,
regardless of what Brandon Aiyuk is doing. Yeah. So the 49ers are in a situation where they need to pay Trent Williams, because that number one seed in the NFC is going to be incredibly valuable. And that means every win counts. Speaking of week one wins that counts, which teams absolutely need to come out as close as we call a must win in the opening week of the season? which teams need to get that win in week one. Wig and I will give you some options or some answers to that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL, wrapping up the week here at Locked On NFL. We talked about the Brandon Aiyuk contract. We talked about Trent Williams still needing a new contract. And now we're going to look ahead to week one. We kind of already did this, talking about the San Francisco 49ers, not whether or not they absolutely need this week one win, but the fact that we don't think they can beat the New York Jets without Trent Williams on the field. Still are favored, still will be favored, potentially even more now that Brandon Aiyuk is coming back. But I don't know, man. No Trent Williams. I think the 49ers are going to have a big problem on their hands if they come to that. But wait, let's look at the rest of the week one schedule. NFL regular season kicking off September 5th on Thursday night with the Baltimore Ravens visiting the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, trying to get a three-peat going starting off week one. So obviously they would love to get a win in week one. The Baltimore Ravens, certainly one of the favorites to be an AFC contender, would love to get a win. But I don't know if either of these teams need the win. Do you agree or do you disagree? And if you agree, where do you see a matchup where one of these teams absolutely needs to come out of week one with a victory?
I don't think both of those teams need a win because ain't nobody in trouble. And you know what I mean? You're going to get the cliche coach talking. You're going to say, hey, man, it's just a long season. It's just week one. And you're going to get all of those things. It's more or less how teams play and what they look like. And if somebody loses to a team that you didn't expect them to lose to, or if, for instance, Mike McCarthy loses a game, that's going to be a big deal because it's going to start the countdown to when people think he's going to get fired. The team I cover they need to win in Jacksonville. They need to get off to a very, very good start because the last 2 years, the team that started the season wasn't the same team that ended the season. So now folks don't know what to expect from them. And I think it's going to be critically important for them to get off to a real good start because their schedule really does get tough as we move forward. And they play at Miami, by the way.
Yeah, so that's a good one. I'm going to go to the NFC East. I'm not going to go to the Washington Commanders, and I'm not going to go to the Dallas Cowboys, but I am going to look at a team that has lost 7 of their last 8 games that counted, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles are at home Friday nights, which is interesting, Friday night football, against the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are a playoff team. So the Philadelphia Eagles absolutely need a win because if they don't get that win, Wig, that's 8 losses in the last 9 games that counted. And immediately, like we've spent this entire offseason, I've talked to the Locked On Eagles guys. We've spent this entire offseason talking about Nick Sirianni and his failures as a leader, as a head coach on that team. What do you even do on this roster, on this team, bro? Because Vic Fangio is running his defense without you. Kellen Moore is running the offense without you. So what do you even provide? What do you even do? A loss at home in primetime, 8th loss in the last 9 games account against a playoff team, the Green Bay Packers, when you're supposed to be one of the NFC favorites, not going to go over well in Philly, not going to go over well in the national media headlines. And guess what? From Friday, there's no action until Sunday. So we got all night Friday night and all day Saturday to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles coming into 2024, riding that negative wave from 2023. So I think the Philadelphia Eagles, Wig, absolutely need and win in week one. If anything, just to turn the good vibes around because the vibes are already not good. Everybody's already just kind of waiting to jump on the collapse train in Philly even further. And a loss to the Green Bay Packers, even though the Packers are not the worst team in the NFL, but because the Packers are a competitor and you're supposed to be the premier competitor to the San Francisco 49ers, they need that victory against the Packers.
I ain't gonna make Philly fans mad. I hope I don't anyway when I say this. Philly might become the first team in a 7-year period from 2017 when a coach won a Super Bowl to fire 2 coaches that went to the Super Bowl in a 7-year period. If they do that, I'm gonna start thinking this. You fire another one. What I'm gonna start thinking is this. It ain't the coaches, it's somebody else. Something's wrong with something else. If you're giving them a whole bunch of dudes that turn on their coach and want to be divas and this, that, and the third, and I don't know if that's the case. And I would really love to really know what kind of problems Sirianni and Hurts have. But usually when there's smoke, there's fire. But my point is when people are allowed to turn on folks that have been successful, like Sirianni, they did go to the Super Bowl and they did not have a big. Basically, he outlasted his opening press conference, right?
Yeah.
Peterson goes to the Super Bowl, wins with Nick Foles. They actually beat Belichick and Brady. You fire both of those guys in 7 years. You fired both of them. Something ain't wrong. It might not be the coaches, man. It might be you. And sometimes people think this happens. Guys don't come in and hire themselves. If you hired 2 mistakes, you did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, a lot of people look at Howie Roseman as like the best GM in the National Football League, and they praise him for all these trades and everything. But if the chemistry ain't working and you're part of the constant and not part of the changes, maybe it's time that some of the changes or some of the constants start changing as well. But it's going to be an interesting season. We're a week away from getting real counting meaningful football on the book. So make sure you come back Monday. Enjoy your weekend, but make sure you come back here Monday for another edition of Locked On NFL, where we discuss the biggest stories from around the National Football League. For your second listen of the day, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get your daily insight into the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. As always, thank you so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day, every day, or thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. For Tony Wiggins, I'm David Harrison, and this has been another episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.